All right, so now we're finally moving on to chapter 2. How do we actually customize QuickBooks Online? Okay, so remember our go to for changing, making settings, and customizing our QuickBooks is primarily going to derive from the gear icon, and for most account settings is going to be under the account settings section under your company. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and explore that real quick on this section here, and we're going to be setting up a few account settings. Okay, we're not going to set them all up because every single chapter is actually going to review the setup section under the account settings, and every chapter is going to have to deal with a particular section of a business. Okay, so we will be visiting this gear icon account settings multiple times throughout the rest of our lecture. Okay, but in this case, we want to set up the main core, or the main idea of things here. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So once again, I'm going to my gear icon, and I'm going to go ahead and click account and settings. Okay, so what's going to happen is a drop down window is going to populate, and on the left column here, you're going to see a bunch of different tabs here. Okay, so as you can see, my page is loading. For any reason, if your screen is way too small because you're using a web browser, you're also more than welcome to make it bigger, right? So in this case, the keyboard shortcut for that is Control and the plus sign to make things look bigger. If you want it smaller, you do Control minus, okay? So there you go. So the first couple tabs that we're going to be taking a look at is the first one, which is going to be the company, right? So under company tab, so I can actually select them. So you can actually select the tabs itself, because what you're doing here is you're basically narrowing down and chopping up certain account settings that you can make changes to or set default settings, okay? So the first section here under company is the company name. So as I mentioned before, if you did not put in your first initial, last name, company file name, and the year, you're more than welcome to change it right here. Okay, by going through the gear icon under my company or your company, okay, and clicking on account settings under company. So there you go, and you're also able to enter in a company logo. So in this case, I can even upload a company logo if I want to, okay? So let's go ahead and do the company logo, because yes, Imagine Photography does also allow you to have a company photo, okay? So in this case, I'm going to go to LV PETA, Accounting QuickBooks, right? Because that's what we are, accounting QuickBooks class. Imagine Photography, and it's going to be the QuickBooks Online Classroom file. So as I've mentioned before, and your logo is going to be this little camera with the word Imagine in the lens. So in this case, awesome logo. So I'm going to go ahead and upload that logo onto my company file, right? So here you go. There you go. I customized it with my company logo. Okay? And of course, if you need to make any save changes or anything like that, it is up to your discretion. Just make sure that you do click this save button here. So again, if you want to make a change to a company name, you may do so by going to you could just click here, or you could use the pencil icon to edit the content that's in this section. So in this case, this section is only looking at company name, legal name, and the EIN or social security. So again, if you are a independent business, you need to use your social security number, right? If you're a 1099 worker, okay? So in this case, the most simple way is just to click anywhere on the section that you want to enter or edit, and it will just let you go ahead and edit the information right then and there. So again, we have I don't know why it's cleared out, but in this case, I'm just going to retype it in. Imagine photography for November 2022. Okay? Is that the same as your company name? Yes, it's the same as my company name, right? Or in this case, legal name? No, that's not my legal company name. Now it's going to ask you for what that legal name is. You can skip that. An EIN. What is an EIN? We call that an employee identification number. An employee identification number is used for tax purposes only. So if you remember from yesterday's lesson, the sole purpose of using QuickBooks Online is to make it easier to file for taxes. So by you entering in the employer identification number, or also known as the business tax ID number, you are one step closer to filing for taxes, because the feasibility and easy to transfer all of this to TurboTax, easy. Okay, so take the employee identification number. So let's take a look at what that number is. So in this case, since we are an established fake business, right? My IEN is 11 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Okay. So we're going to select that this is an EIN, not a social security number. So that's what SSN stands for, because we are a legitimate S corporation. So my business identification number is going to be like that. It's usually 2 numbers and then 7 digits after, right? Where social security is 324, right? So that's how you identify a business from an individual, is based on the number sequence that you have. Okay? At the end of the day, they're both coded with 9 numbers. Okay? And I'm going to go ahead and save. So that was the very first section here. The next section is going to be the company type. So if you remember, we said what kind of company type are we? What tax form that we use? We said we were a small business, or we said that we were an S corp, right? So that means here it automatically told me that I'm going to be needing to use these 2 exact tax forms. Great. I don't need to do the research for that, because again, Intuit also does TurboTax, which is a tax program, right? And they already did the form for you. If you establish yourself as an S corp, it will tell you this is the form that you need to file for taxes. Okay? And then now it says what kind of industry you are. So this is where, again, remember when we skipped it in the very beginning? This is where I can now fill in that my industry is going to be miscellaneous store retails. Okay? All right, so again, you can type it in and the drop-down menu will populate. Okay, so miscellaneous store retailers right here. Okay? Now, by me putting in this industry, most cases it should auto-populate your chart of accounts. Okay? If you do not put an industry in here, it will give you the very basic chart of accounts, such as your checking account. If you said you wanted sales, so you're going to have your revenues, and then you're going to have your costs, such as cost of goods sold, inventory, the very, 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 very basics of what you said in the interview, that you were going to set up sales tax, you're going to set up revenue, you're going to set up bills. It has generated those accounts for those things that you said you wanted to set up. But by putting this industry specific identity or profile into your QuickBooks, it should populate what a typical miscellaneous store, retail store should have for your chart of accounts. Okay? Now, for any reason that it does not go through, I have posted a chart of accounts that is an Excel file that you can download on the Google Classroom. And then when you do the chart of accounts, you are more than welcome to put that into your chart of accounts and import it into your data, which we'll show you how to import in a couple chapters from now, right? We'll do, tomorrow we'll set up our products and services, okay? And once I put this, I'm gonna go ahead and click save, okay? Next section is going to be contact info, okay? So what is the email that you're going to be using to contact? In this case, I'm not going to use my personal contact information, right? This is for my school, right? What I'm going to be using is going to be what the fictitious business email should be, right? Which is going to be info@imaginephoto.biz, okay? Now again, when we were doing this Imagine Photography in the previous QuickBooks scenario, so back then in our desktop days, this is what they required us to fill in. So it may not be in your book, but I want you to utilize it because I don't want you to be sending yourself emails and cluttering your emails. So in this case, info@imaginephoto.biz. Okay? So info@imaginephoto.biz. Okay? Then it says right here, is this contact information going to also be your customer facing email? So this means when customers go and contact you, is this the same email you want to use for customers to contact you in case of they need to talk about their order, they need to talk about anything that's in regards to their purchase from you? Is this going to be the same email? If not, and you have a different one, maybe it's customers@imaginephoto.biz, right? It's a separate email. Then go ahead and uncheck mark that and type it in there. But in this case, I'm going to say, yes, it's the same email that my customers can contact me with, okay? Then it's going to be the company phone number. Now, in this case, we have already one that's designated to us, so it's 925-555-1111. Okay, is that a real phone number? I don't know, okay? This is what they had for the previous Imagine Photography, so I'm assuming they're going to reuse the same phone numbers. Okay, and website, we already said, is www.imaginephoto.biz. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and save. Okay, so I'm filling in my company's contact information and so on and so forth. So next one is going to be my address, right? Do I actually have a company address? In this case, yes, you do. Okay, your company address is going to be right here at 123 Main Street in Pleasanton, California, 94566. Okay? Now, here's the rule of thumb. It will also mandate you to map out a legitimate address. So it has to be a real location, a real existing address. So that's one thing too, because again, the more information that you're filling in here, so all this information, contact information, ultimately, you're filling out your tax form right there. So if this isn't your real address, then you're gonna have to use a legitimate address. So that's why when I search it, I have to search to see if this address actually exists. Now, yes, it does exist. Okay, Main Street, Pleasanton, California, 94566. So it has to be a legitimate address. So in this case, because this is Questiva. They use a fictitious business, but they use a real address. Because right here, when I searched it, there it populates. So it has to be a legitimate address. Now, if it's your own company, or if it's for your personal reference, you are not obligated to have to fill this information in, okay? Because again, it's personal information, so you do not need to put your own information in unless you are planning to open up a real business and file for taxes. But in this case, you're not obligated to have a address in here. But in this case, the company does have an address. And I'm going to click save. Okay. So here, what did it do? It actually used the Google Maps to map out the actual location. So yes, that's why it has to be a legitimate, real address. Okay. And of course, customers that can email you, or if they're trying to pay you, send a payment, or is this the same address that they're going to use? Yes. We'll just say it is the same address. Okay. And again, is this the legal address? Yes. Okay. We'll just say it's the actual address that you're using to file for everything, right? And that concludes the first section for your company section. Okay? All right. So then the other ones, let's see what other sections that we're going to fill in. Okay. We're going to be looking at products and services. Okay. So this is where we get to go ahead and turn on sales, but also what things that we need to have on our sales form, right? So in this case, I'm going to go to sales. Okay. Under products and services, so this part right here, we will get to visit it towards the end of chapter 2, I believe, where we get to customize our own actual sales form. So then when we actually invoice our customers, we'll get to do it all, okay? And what necessary components do you want to have appear on those sales forms? So we'll talk about that again at the end of chapter 2. Okay? So here you go, products and services. You want to ensure that the products and services that you are going to be invoicing is going to appear on the invoice. So in this case, what do you want to have on there? Okay? Do you want to have a SKU number? So again, if you have an inventory type of manager where you're relying on barcodes and SKU numbers, this would definitely be 100% helpful to you, because you can put that on an invoice and the customer will know, okay, well, I'm looking for this product. Okay, give me the SKU number. I'll search it. The SKU numbers, yada, 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 right? So that's going to be very helpful, especially if you're selling a product, multiple products that have a unique coding to them. But again, if your inventory isn't filled with a bunch of those items, then you don't need to have a SKU number. It's only optional. Okay. Do I want to turn on price rules? Okay. Price rules. What are they? They are a means where you get to designate certain prices to certain customers. Okay. So yes, a business can charge a customer a different rate than other customers, right? So for example, a corporation, you're going to charge them the highest amount, right? Because they're more likely to be able to afford it. Whereas your residential customers, they may, be taken back by your price offer if you charge them corporate levels, right? So you want to adjust your pricing levels to your niche, right? To the certain customer group that you're trying to appeal to. So in this case, that's what price rules are. I'm going to leave them off, okay? Then it says, do I want to track quantity and price/rates? Of course. Of course I want to keep track of that, right? And then the last one says, keep track of inventory quantity on hand. Absolutely. Especially when we dive into making our purchases making our sales, and when we set up our products and services list, which is going to be the first thing that we do, I believe, tomorrow, I definitely want to be able to keep track of my inventory by keeping track of the quantity on hand. So absolutely, and I'm going to save it. Okay. Okay, next one's going to be time. Okay, so again, what do we primarily use time for? So time, you can do one or the other, right? You have the option to use time as a means to track your employees' time, right, for their hours that they've worked, or you can use it for in case you have special projects and you want to measure that, you want to be able to turn on time. Now, time is going to be one of those subscriptions that you do need to pay for if you are going to be utilizing it more than to keep track. So in this case, the time feature allows you to have a live action clock in tower. So that means your whoever your users can log in and clock in their time, so it's much more accurate instead of punching in their hours from from A to B. And with that time feature, it allows you to convert it directly into payroll. So that's what that time subscription does. But if you don't need that, for instance, for this this section here, we just want to make sure that we have the capabilities to use time. Now, time is one of those sections that is universal throughout all of the subscriptions for the QuickBooks Online subscription. So you do have it available, but the subscription itself to process, have that live action clock in tower and processing it to payroll, that's an additional subscription that you have to pay on top of that. Okay, and we'll talk about the subscription in a second, but in this case, we want to make sure that when we are setting this up, we want to make sure that it is for Monday, all right, and that it is for that these things are off, right? Okay, so that we want to allow time to be billable, so make sure we want to, so we're going to turn that on instead of off, and then we're going to go ahead and show service fields. Okay. So because our company is mostly a service provider, right? We also want to make sure that we keep track of the time for our services to be completed. So in this case, right, they'll talk about the whole subscription up here, right, what it can do for you, but I'm going to ignore that and scroll down and make sure that I set this up. So right now, it says that my timesheets start on Sunday. No, I don't want that to start on Sunday. I want that to start on Monday. And I do have the show service field on, and I do have that billable feature on. And we'll talk about billable time more so in chapter 9 when we actually dive into job costing. Okay? All right. And let's see what else I need to set up here. Yes.
So even though the book says to keep those two things off, you want them to have them both on?
Oh, so in this case, so the pictures that I have here do not match anything that I put in the PowerPoint because it's just an example of what it looks like. That's it.
All right, gotcha.
Mm-hmm. All right, so last one's going to be the advanced settings here for accounting. Okay. Okay. It says first month of the fiscal year. So this case, we need to go to advanced settings. Okay. So that's going to be one of the last tabs that you will find on this account settings section here. So very last one is advanced tab. Okay. And the first one's going to be accounting. So this is where we need to set up our fiscal date and we need to set up our starting date. So remember. Okay. So it says right here, what is your fiscal year? We're going to assume that we're starting as of the fiscal year starting January. So there you go. It's already pre-selected as January. What is your income tax year? Okay, so when do you file taxes? It's going to be the same as my fiscal year, right? And then what kind of accounting method are you going to be using? So in this case, it's defaulted, like I've mentioned before. It's defaulted to accrual because this will give you the maximum capabilities to use all the features that QuickBooks Online offers, right? And the last one says, do I want to set a closing date? Now, you definitely want to be careful with that one, okay? Because setting a closing date will ultimately also lock up your company file, okay? We'll talk about this more so in chapter 11 when we actually close out our accounting period. You do need to set a closing date when you do this, okay? Now, again, I try to avoid setting a closing date for the sole purpose is if you end up locking yourself out and you end up forgetting the password, then you're going to need to call Intuit to unlock the company file for you. But let's say you do set it up and you do create a password and you know it. Every time you put in any transaction after the closing date, it will give you a message that's going to say you're putting in a transaction after the accounting period. And that can be very tedious and annoying for every single transaction that you put in there. So I recommend my students to not set the closing date until you get close to the end of your accounting period, which means at the end of the year, right? When you are ready to close up your company file, right? That will be the recommendation to set your closing date. But in this case, if I were to set a closing date, what would it look like, right? I get to choose the date that I want to close my books for, and I get to set an actual, so in this case, it says right here, allow changes after viewing a warning and entering in a password. So again, of course, this is also so that your other users do not have access to your company file and make those fraudulent charges, right? Okay, so you want to prevent that from happening and keeping that password to yourself. But like I've mentioned, I am not going to be creating one because the last couple classes that I've taught this, right? I set the closing date and it kept giving me that warning sign saying I'm entering in a transaction after a closing date. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and just turn it off, okay? Like I mentioned, we'll come back and visit this exact section in chapter 11, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and click save. Next thing here is you want to go ahead and let me see. There are two accounting methods. Okay, we already talked about that. And of course, you want to close the books and turn that off. Okay, perfect. Okay, we already went through all of that. All right, so then now more advanced settings here for the chart of accounts, right? So this section here, do you want the ability to enable account numbers? Okay, that is a question you're going to need to ask yourself. Is accounting numbers going to benefit you in the long run, or is not having account numbers your preference, right? Because ultimately, when we take a look at our chart of accounts, right? If you do not have that many accounts, it's not going to matter whether you have numbers or not. But if you're able to memorize a 5-digit code over a account name, then you're probably better off using account numbers, okay? So, for instance, right, if as you go through the years and processes of being a bookkeeper and accountant, right, you're looking at account after account after account after account. You may think an account exists, but it doesn't. Or you may not know that an account doesn't exist when it does. So in this case, if you have trouble memorizing all these different account names, then and it's just much easier to use a 5-digit code system, then you're better off using that because that's a preference, right? Not everybody is comfortable using account numbers. It doesn't necessarily mean your chart of accounts is going to be set up, but if you set your account numbers on, then your chart of accounts is going to be in order by account number, okay? But by default, it's by account type, right? We talked about this earlier in chapter 1. It's default by account type. Your assets are going to always go first, your liabilities go next, equity comes after, your income, and then your expenses. So there is a particular order that your chart of accounts is in to make it that much more easier to create your financial statements, right? But in this case, if you don't find it helpful, then you don't need to have it on, okay? So in this case, let's go ahead and choose. I believe we are not going to have those accounts on. So again, chart of accounts. So here you go. Do you want to enable chart of account number? So right now it's already off. Do you have a tip account? So in this case, since you don't have an account in general, you're just going to leave it off. Okay. So we'll talk about all of this when we dive into the sales section. So in this case, it's already off. We're not going to use account numbers. Okay. Okay. And then let's see, we have automation. So this one is going to be very key that you have everything off. Okay. So in this case, this is automation. What does this section do for you? So when we dive into chapters such as chapter 5, we get to take a look at how to build credits and or vendor credits and credit memos. That means when a customer decides to return merchandise, we issue them a credit memo. When we demand a refund from my vendors, they will issue me a vendor credit. Now, in these cases, by doing those, and we have to initiate it by creating those different forms, right? Those different transactions. If you have this automation selected on, that means it's going to automatically apply it for you without you even acknowledging it. Now, especially when we're going to go through the accounting and look at how to create a credit memo and how to create those vendor credits slowly, we want to also be ensure how we are able to apply it manually. So in this case, I should have all of these automations off. Okay. So I'm going to select not having the filled in information from a previous form. I don't want that on. I am not going to automatically apply credit. So that's the first one because I want to show you how you manually do it. Okay. Now, if it's much easier for you on your end, that way you don't have to keep track of it yourself, then go ahead and have that on. But you have to remember, if it's automatically applied and you're going through your accounting system and you are looking at billions and billions of invoices, right? And if you have no capacity to keep track of which one it did this or which one got that, you're better off manually doing it so then you can ensure that that person received a credit memo or so vice versa, right? You want to make sure that your accounting is correct versus automated for you, right? Another one's going to be automatically invoice unbilled activity. So that's already off. We'll talk about billable activity in chapter 9 again. Okay, and it says right here, automatically apply bill payment. So in this case, so again, if you need to make a payment, yes, you have the option to do auto pay. But once again, if you are the kind of person that you're starting up you're starting up your business, you don't necessarily have the necessary funds to just go ahead and pay your bills all at once, you definitely want to make sure you pick and choose your bills that you pay. So make sure you have that automatically bill payment off. And I'm going to go ahead and save close. And yes, we will visit this one more time in chapter 9. Okay? And chapter 5, right, for the credits section. Okay? And then, let's see. Other preferences, right? So we've mentioned this. If you want to look at other ones, it says right here at the very bottom, you definitely want to make this change here because it says right here, other preferences. How long do you want to be logged into your company file? And if right now it's set as, let's see, it's set as 1 hour. Now, if you are the kind of person who works on your file all the time, you don't need to worry about this. But if you're going to be idling or away from your computer, you definitely want to make sure, well, how do you want to be setting up your company file? Do you want to have to log in every hour? Usually that's for the safety of, if you're a corporation and you're in the office, you don't want to leave your computer unattended with your file open for anybody to just walk in and just enter in a transaction, right? But in this case, since if you are working on your own business and you don't want to have the ability to have to log in your credentials every single hour, then I recommend you to change this section right here to prevent you to get kicked out of the QuickBooks Online, right? And having to log back in, okay? Because that can be, that can be frustrating if you have to log in your credentials every single time. So to prevent that, now in this case, we teach this class for 3 to 3.5 hours, right? I would need the maximum ability to stay logged into my company file. So in this case, the longest time I can idle on this page is 3 hours, right? So I'm going to set it as 3 hours. Okay? And other preferences that you have here, right, is right, that you can set up a date format. So in this case, how do you want your dates to be displayed on your forms and stuff? I do prefer the month, date, year. Okay. Do I want to have a type of number format? So in this case, I do like the comma style, or we call this in Excel the accounting style, where you see the number sign, the actual commas, and the decimal points for the dollar, the cents, and stuff like that. So I do like that. And let's see, customer labels. In this case, I'm just gonna leave that alone. It's just basically what you want to label your individuals who purchase from you. So in this case, if you're in a medical office, you can, instead of calling them customers, you call them patients, right? So you can add a title on the people who purchase from you. Okay? It doesn't have to necessarily be customers. In this case, I'm going to leave it at customers. Okay? And again, it says right here, warn if duplicate checks numbers, right? So if you're using the write a checks window and you utilize a check number that you already use, that you can flag it down to give you a warning sign that saying that this check number has been used. Okay, that will be good accounting settings, right, to prevent you from making mistakes that you have to fix along the way. All right, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so that is it for the section for the account settings. Okay, so yes, right. So I do want to spend a few minutes real quick to talk about your subscriptions and your payment options. So in this case, if I go up to the second section right here under billable, okay, billing and subscriptions. So this is what I was talking about, everything that you need to know. So for those of you who just signed up for the QuickBooks Online, your expiration date will tell you right here. So in this case, my a QuickBooks account, this Plus subscription is good until November 21st of 2023. So again, every student gets 1 full year subscription to the QuickBooks Plus subscription. Okay? You have it in your billing and subscriptions tab under your account settings. Okay? Other things that we talked about was payroll. If you want to subscribe to a payroll, you're more than welcome to, okay? But again, that means you need to pay for it on your own, okay? Now, with this right here, they also do give you a 30-day free trial, but like I said, that is up to your discretion if you want to do that on your own. I will not be teaching using the payroll subscription because once again, if I tap on this 30-day subscription, I won't be able to teach the next class, right? Because once that subscription's over, that's it, right? You have to start paying for it, all right? So in this case, they do give you a 30-day free trial. Most of the subscriptions are 30-day free trials first. If you like it, then you subscribe to it. But if you don't like it, then you can, unsubscribe to it. Other ones right here, you got QuickBooks Full Service Bookkeeping. So this is for most bookkeepers who are more advanced level of accounting. So this one is, they give you a little subscription that will kind of gear you towards what you need to do. We don't need that because we're not advanced bookkeepers. And let's see, and then QuickBooks Time, which I mentioned, right? That allows you to have a live-in, clock-in system, let your employees log in, click, check in, clock out, and they can take that information and transform it into a payroll. Okay, and other subscriptions here is QuickBooks Online Payments. Now, what does this do? QuickBooks Online Payments allows you, if your type of business allows accepting forms of payments, whether it's via online, whether they're accepting a credit card. So it's right here: Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, and Apple Pay. If you are willing to accept this, right, these form of payments, this makes it much more easier to, one, pay off these vendors, because if you're going to be using them to collect money from your customers, these kind of credit card companies, what they're essentially doing for you is they're taking the burden of you having to take care of accounts receivable. Okay, so we'll talk about that in chapter 5. What happens when you have to deal with accounts receivable and your customers fail to make payments? Then you have to go and deal with that customer. And in this case, right, you would have to send them mass emails in regards, charging them late fee after late fee after late fee, trying your hardest to contact them, calling them, and this person doesn't respond. What do you do? And that is exactly what what the payments option does is it basically takes the ability, these credit card companies are taking that option for, so you don't have to stress about your customers paying you on time, and they forward you the money right then and there because they are a credit lender, and the customer is willing to accept a liability on their end, that they have to make a payment to the credit card company, not your business. So by doing so, these credit card companies ask for a simple service charge. Now, because the vast majority of today's society, where the easy accessibility of using Apple Pay, PayPal, Venmo, and especially these credit card companies, right? Everywhere you go, you always see every company has the ability to use Visa or MasterCard or all 4 options. So in this case, if you sign up with the subscription, you're saying that your customers can choose to pay you with these following different forms of payments using these credit card companies. And this subscription is going to pay those credit card companies that portion of your sales. So in this case, instead of agreeing with each and every single credit card company on what percentage for sales, you're doing it all in one package. So this one's really cool. And this also allows you to also manage those sales that you receive on credit cards, because if the customer returns a product and they used a credit card, they will deal it for you instead of you having to call that credit card company, let that person know that this person returned items, so you need to manually wire that money back to that person's account. QuickBooks Payments will do it for you automatically. And it also helps you manage your credit cards as well. Okay. And then other ones, checks and supplies. So again, there's a bunch of other subscriptions on here. So these are the primary subscriptions that you can have with the QuickBooks application. But again, everything else is an additional charge for every other subscription. Okay. All right. So that's something that you need to know. I also want to show you this last one. Okay. We're going to talk about usage. Okay. So with the QuickBooks Online subscription for the Plus version, you are very limited to space. Okay? So as you can see, how many users can you have? You can only have up to 5 users. So this profile right now, me being the bookkeeper and accountant, that's already using 1 user profile. I do have the ability with the Plus subscription to invite 4 more users. Okay, and I believe with the other subscription, the advanced subscription, I think you have up to 10 to 20 users that you can have available. Okay, so check that section for the subscription options. Okay, for the different ones that we did in chapter 1, where we took a look at all the different options of what subscription you want. And this will right here, gives you your ability to view the content that's in here. So for your chart of accounts, you can only use 250 accounts. Now this is use, not list. Okay? You can list 1,000 chart of accounts, but you can only use 250 of them. So again, this is where this type of business, you have to be very generous in terms of what accounts you truly need to record the necessary income and expenses that you are required to operate your business. You only have the capabilities of using 250 accounts. Use 250 accounts. Okay? And your first one you're going to use is your checking account. That's number 1. Okay? And then, of course, tags and groups is basically how many have you used. All right. So in this case, we'll talk about tags and groups more so tomorrow when we set up our tags list. Okay. All right. So that is what I just wanted to show you there. So you kind of are aware of what your subscription entails, right? So the usage of what you can use and what subscriptions that are available to you that you can sign up right here by going to your account and settings, and you can sign up for the subscriptions if you feel like it, okay? But once again, I'm just teaching you this lesson, okay? We're not going to be utilizing any other subscription except for the QuickBooks Online subscription, okay? I'm not gonna do payroll, not gonna use time, and whatever subscription that is available, okay? Okay, so that is it for your Imagine Photography. So that is setting up most of the generic basic account settings that you need to have for now. Okay, we have let's see, we have 12 more chapters of content that's going to be utilizing that account settings over and over and over again. So again, we're not completely done with our company file just yet. There's a lot of things that we want to make changes through our account settings. Okay, so we'll visit that again in another section. Okay. All right. So let's actually start setting up our chart of accounts. So what is our chart of accounts? Our chart of accounts is a means for us to be able to organize our business transactions in a meaningful way. Meaning, for example, I'm going to be categorizing my business transactions based on what had happened. So if I spent money, then I have to refer to either my cash on hand or my checking account. Where did the money come from, right? I spent the money. And what did I buy? Maybe I bought a couch, which is considered furniture, right? So that is something that I can utilize to translate my business transactions and categorize them based on what the transaction is. I spent money to buy a couch, so therefore I used my checking account to buy furniture. So those accounts is ultimately going to give you information on your business. How much money do you have in your checking account? How much money did you spend from your checking account? What did you buy? What are the assets that you buy? What is the equipment, furniture, and your fixed assets? What patents did you invest in? What expenses did you incur? Did you have rent expense, advertising expense? All of that is what you're going to be needing to identify. Now, your chart of accounts, once again, does not have to be premeditated, or it doesn't have to be created ahead of time. Because in this case, you're never going to know what expense that you will run into at any random given point in time, right? This month I need to have advertising expense. Next month, oh, my license is expired. I need to renew it. Therefore, this month I need to do a license renewal. Maybe I need a permit renewal. There are many occasions where a business is not going to be able to predict every single expense that will derive, right? And what if I just said, I want to change up my menu? I want to say that I serve this now. Then I'm going to have to include that as part of my sales, right? So therefore, my chart of accounts is always constantly growing and changing, okay? So that means when you set up your chart of accounts, you're not always done. And for the rest of this chapter, and for the rest going on forth, we will be needing to add an account after another account after another account. So you don't stop here. But let's go ahead and visit this chart of accounts. How do I access my chart of accounts? Okay. So once again, you're able to access your chart of accounts by simply going to that gear icon. And right here under your company, you have your chart of accounts. Okay. You're also able to find this under list. So if I go to all lists, right, and click on that, first thing you have here is your chart of accounts. Okay, so that's two ways that you're able to access your chart of accounts. Okay, so since I'm already here on my list, I'm going to go ahead and click on that chart of accounts. So it says here, I don't have anything in my chart of accounts. So this happens to be one of those things where I don't have a chart of accounts. So like I mentioned, I've already had a previous one for you. In this case, it did not generate my chart of accounts for me. So I'm going to have to do it for me. Unless, let me see. Let me try going accessing in another way. Let me see if I click on here. Will it show me? No, it will not. Okay. But here it gives you, oh, there you go. See my chart of accounts. So here you go. Like I've mentioned, if you set your industry, it should produce a general chart of accounts for you automatically. This is to help you save a lot of time, okay? In terms of what you need for your typical industry. So I said I am a miscellaneous store retailer, right? So therefore, they have things like I have to have, I'm trying to find something that's common. Sales, right? Sales of product income, okay? I have other things such as cost of goods sold, which is related to selling my inventory, right? I have things like shipping cost, right? Which is an expense. So again, this is what happens when you set up your industry. It should create a generic chart of accounts for you. Now, as you remember, my usage said that I haven't used any of my chart of accounts. That is true because a lot of your accounts here have not been used. So that is what you want to make sure that you do ensure that your list could be thousands and thousands of accounts. But at the end of the day, you can only utilize 250 of them. Okay, that's the capacity for the Plus subscription. So in this case, this is where it's just saying, hey, this is the generic chart of accounts based off of the industry that you plugged into your company settings. Now, if you do not have any of this in your chart of accounts, like I've mentioned, you are able to import the chart of accounts. So I already have an Excel spreadsheet that's in the Google Classroom that I've created for the purpose of this class, if in case you don't have any of these accounts that you see here. Okay? And how do you do that? Well, if you go up here to the green little icon where it says new, you can click that down arrow and import it. Okay? All right? Now, in this case, this right here, this chart of accounts has majority of the accounts that I'm actually needing for this exact scenario. So I don't need to duplicate my chart of accounts in here. Okay? It's only if you do not see anything in your chart of accounts. Okay? All right. Now, how do I do that? So once again, if I do click on this, right, and you don't see anything in your chart of accounts, you can click on import. And what that's going to do is it's going to ask you to find and locate that file that you're looking for. So browse, okay, and you're going to put in and plug in your chart of accounts. Now, again, I will show you how to do this tomorrow for the products and services, but for now, let's just go ahead and assume that we have everything in my chart of accounts, okay? So I'm just gonna exit out of there. So this is my chart of accounts. I should have majority of the accounts that I need on my list. Now, you also have a copy of the chart of accounts list that you're supposed to verify at the end of the chapter, right? Verify that you have all of these accounts listed in your chart of accounts, okay? So now that I have that, let's go ahead and take a look at our first task here is to add an account. So let's go ahead and add an account. So how do I do that? Well, just exactly like I mentioned, right? This is straightforward. It's straightforward and easy. You go up to your chart of accounts. Right here, you got the plus, or not plus new. You have the new little icon in green. And it's going to populate a little form right next to you on the side of the page. So this is where you either select your account type. So in this case, the first thing that I'm going to be entering in here is going to be my checking account, which is a bank type of an account. All right, and I'm going to name this checking 1025. Usually, as an association, you would always do the last 4 digits of your account number. So if you have multiple credit cards, usually that will be the indicator of which card you're going to be using. So a lot of companies, a lot of different merchandise systems, they use that same technique where they have the credit card company and then the last 4 digits of your number, so you know exactly which account you're using. So that's essentially what we're doing here. We're going to create a checking account 1025. Okay, so first thing is we're creating a bank account. Okay, so once I click on bank, it should say search. Okay, so this is where you're going to be locating where in your chart of accounts you're looking for. So this is going to be under your bank account, like we said, right? Bank account. And now you can go ahead and put in. So your tax ID, it's a drop down menu, so in this case it will let you know, so when you do file your taxes, where is this being put on the form? In this case, we're going to acknowledge that this is a checking account, right? And what is your account name? Checking. $10.25. Okay, sorry, there is something with my internet, so it is lagging just a bit. Okay, so again, description. Do you really need a description to describe your checking account? If it's to a specific bank, go ahead and put your description there. So I can say, I don't know, this is National Bank, I don't know. So in this case, you could put as much information as you'd like. You could say primary company bank account, business bank account, whatever you want. It's up to you. If you want to have a description, you're not obligated to, right? You can just fill in the most basic information, which is just the account type, what category it's going to be under, and the account name, and that will be it. And then you can fill in your tax form in there as well. Okay? Now, important thing that you need to know is going to be account balances. Okay? Rule of thumb here is you are not to touch the account balance. Okay? Why is that? In this case, because if you set up an account balance, you can trigger a few things where, for instance, if I go ahead and enter in my money here, where is my equal and opposite credit, right? Because we said if I'm going to debit my account for $25,000, where's my equal and opposite credit going to go? That is something that you need to figure out ahead of time before you put any account balances. Now, the strict rule of thumb here is when you're setting up an accounts receivable account, they tell you do not put account balance in there. Why? An accounts receivable represents the money that customers owe you, right? And if you put a lump sum balance in there, you're not letting QuickBooks know who owes you the money and how much each customer owes you, right? You're just identifying that they owe you a lump sum money. So then when you do put those transactions in for those customers and you start receiving that money, your account balance will never be affected because you never identified who and how much each person owes you. So in this case, they warn you in the book, do not put any account balances. And I'll show you what to do with the bank account balance and how do you actually get an account balance in there. So in chapter 12, they do teach you that, I believe in step 5, you're going to need to use your trial balance to put in a general journal to create these opening balances. But in this case, you guys never been exposed to a general journal before. That's not until chapter 5. So in this case, hold tight. We'll eventually get there, all right? And we'll see how you're able to utilize a general journal. And in chapter 5 for sure, I'll show you how to create those account balances using the general journal. But for now, leave your account balance at 0, okay? All right, and I'm going to go ahead and click Save. So now if I actually go ahead and take a look at my chart of accounts under right here, right there, my checking account, right here, bank, checking. Simple. No description because I didn't want one, but in this case, you already have it done, right? And my account balance is 0, okay? So go ahead and do the rest of these. So again, just follow what the PowerPoint says. I do need to move on to another section here, okay? So yes, you need to create a money market, create your first credit card. Maybe let's do the credit card real quick so you guys can see this one too, okay? So let's do another one real quick. So again, you're going to go to your chart of accounts and you're going to click on that new icon right at the top right in green. You're going to identify what that account type is. So in this case, I'm going to do a credit card, okay? And now it's going to say, where are you going to put that credit card account under? Well, you got it right here. You don't need to create a category or a detail type. It should be populated automatically in your chart of accounts. Okay, so in this case, I'm creating a credit card. Where is it going to fall under? My credit card. Okay, and same thing with your tax section. It's going to be under credit card, right? And then now you can go ahead and say, this is my Visa credit card, card number 5678. Was it? Let's see. Credit card number Visa 5678. So again, here you go. You don't need a oh, I spelled Visa wrong. V-I Visa 5678, and of course description, it's up to you. And then account balance, nothing. Do not put an account balance in your Visa credit card, right? Now, they say that for the next steps of that, now after you've successfully put your chart of accounts in there, you put your account balance in there, you need to now put in all of your retroactive transactions, things that happened in the past, so then you can get your account balances to where they need to be, right? But that involves entering all bills, that involves entering invoices, which we don't learn until chapter 4 and chapter 3. So again, we're going to skip that section for now once again. Okay? So there you go. Now I have the credit card account in here. Okay? And look, like I've mentioned, right? If you notice this, my chart of accounts is in order by my assets. Then goes my liabilities. Then goes my equity, and then it goes, so current assets, current liabilities, here's your equity, and then these are your income accounts, okay, and then your expense accounts. So in that exact order, okay, so it's organized by that, okay. Now let's see what's next. So again, do the rest for homework, okay. So now, how do I create a sub-account? So, for instance, what is a sub-account? So, for an example, you have inventory, right? Inventory is such a generic account. Now, let's say I want to specify my inventory items, right? How would I do that? I would create a sub-account. So, for instance, right, imagine photography. I can say under my inventory account, it's going to hold my photo frames, okay? It's going to hold my cameras. It's going to hold my photo paper that I sell. And it's going to hold all of that, right? That's just an example of what a sub-account does. Is it expands and it gives the main account more detail. So, for instance, if I have just a generic account such as advertising expense, right? How can I expand advertising expense to be more? I can say one of them is for marketing purposes, one of them is for promotional, one of them could be for a specific event, right? But it's all going to be categorized under advertising, right? But there are things that I want to specify specifically. So in this case, we're going to do an example right here where we do an expense under advertising, and we're going to create one for marketing, okay? So we're going to create a marketing account under advertising, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Now let's identify if I even have the advertising account in the first place. So you can be able to search your account. So right here, I'll go up to this right here, type in, and you can even filter your details based on what they are. So in this case, content forward, or since yeah, counts forward, or it's counts toward. I'm just gonna use all. So in this case, we're going to identify, do I even have advertising? So I typed in the first couple letters, and I do have advertising and marketing. So I do have this expense. So I want to make sure that I have a section for just strictly advertising and strictly for marketing. So how do I go ahead and create that sub-account? Now in your book, it's a little outdated. They do expect you to identify that sub-account. But with the new QuickBooks, it's actually 10 times more easier to do. So in this case, if I were to go create my expense account, how do I go ahead and identify that? So what I'm going to do here is, under my list here, I'm going to locate my advertising expense, or I can type it in, whichever one is easiest for you. So I can type it in. So ADV, right here, advertising. So if I want to list it underneath advertising expense, I go ahead and click here, right? I click that. So I have social media, web, and so on and so forth, right? And I'm going to call this, so again, what is this account name? This is going to be marketing, right? Marketing. Okay, marketing. And I'm going to go ahead and click save and close, right? So if I were to locate where that advertising account is on my chart of accounts, so let's see, I'm just going to scroll down because it should be under expenses, right? Let's see, advertising. Okay, boom. Right here, I put marketing underneath advertising. And this is a sub account. So again, QuickBooks, again, the online application is always, putting new features in, changing the platform of what it looks like. So you do need to go download that revised version of that book. But in this case, it's much more simpler. You don't need to identify the sub account. In this case, you just use the search icon under the account that you categorized it as and locate what you're looking for and select the account that you want it under. So in this case, I just selected advertising for my account and boom, I added it and it's under. So this is a sub account for under advertising. Okay. Now, if it doesn't fall under a category, then you don't need to identify. In this case, it would just be whatever the account name is. Okay. All right. So again, do the other one for homework. Okay. Okay. So of course, what if I make some typos? What if I made some mistakes, or I want to make a change to this? Okay. You do have the ability to edit your accounts, right? Because this is a program and you're adding in every detail into your chart of accounts, there are some of the accounts that you don't like the name on it. So for instance, I don't want my my advertising, right? I don't want it to say website ads. I just want to call it website. That's it. I don't need that website ads. So how do I edit the information from my chart of accounts? So here I'm already under advertising and marketing. So I do see that I have website ads. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll all the way to the right. And here you have this little drop down menu. If I click on that, it's going to allow me to edit the content that I want to change. So in this case, I can change where it's under. I can change anything that I want for this. But in this case, I'm only wanting to change just the name here. So it's just website. No ads there. So I can go ahead and save. And then now, if I look at my chart of accounts, it should be updated with that change. So yes, you can edit any account at any given time, including if you don't want this account anymore, replace it, change it completely, get rid of it, or to utilize an account that you don't ever want to use and make it a new account. Okay, so let's locate that expense again. There you go. It says shipping. Where am I? Billable expenses. It should be right here. Oh, these are liabilities. I have to go to expenses. So right here. Materials, utilities. Okay, it should make the changes. So in this case, if I can't find it, you can locate it yourself. Okay, there you go, right here, advertising, and now it changed to website. Okay. So again, if you can add any account in here, you have the ability to edit the information. So if I accidentally misspelled, like earlier, I put VUSA, I can change that immediately by just going to the right side here, more options, and then drop down menu. So if you look at the top, it says action right here at the top. You're going to click end that button and then change it. Okay? Right. So let's see what's next. Okay. So it says making an account inactive. Now, here is the rule of thumb. Unfortunately, with the capabilities of QuickBooks Online, you absolutely cannot delete anything in your chart of accounts. Okay? So whatever default settings that you have for your default chart of accounts, unfortunately, you can't do anything about it. Right? You cannot delete them. However, what are the options that you can do to get rid of them off your chart of accounts? Well, the first one is you can choose to make an account inactive. So remember, like I've mentioned, you can have a list of 1,000 accounts, but only use 250 of them, right? So yes, you can create a new account if you want to, but then again, you're cluttering your chart of accounts with unnecessary accounts that you're just adding, right? Why not concise and condense it? Well, how do you do that? In this case, one of the options is to make an account inactive, okay? So this one is going to, what essentially you're doing here is you're hiding your item on your chart of accounts. So in this case, we don't ever going to use land. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that account inactive, okay? All right. So let's go ahead and find my land. So in this case, I can either locate it by looking at my fixed assets list, or I can search it, right? So in this case, there it is. Land is right here. I am going to go all the way to my more actions column, and I'm going to click on that drop down menu, and it's going to give me the option to make inactive. So in this case, in parentheses, it says won't reduce usage. Okay, so again, it won't reduce it, meaning like if you use this account, it won't zero it out, right? Or it won't say that you didn't use it. But if this is an account that you absolutely don't use, period, it has no effect on that, okay? So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click make inactive. And you're going to get an error message saying, are you sure you want to make this account inactive? I say yes, okay? Now you're going to get this little window that says, great, it's done, it's successful. Now, I no longer have that land account, right? If I go ahead and scroll down to my fixed assets list, it's gone. I don't have my land account. So what if all of a sudden, I decide to purchase land? Now I need that account. And I know it already exists, but I chose to make it inactive. So how do I view those inactive accounts again? Well, you can go to your gear icon. There's a tiny gear icon on your chart of accounts, and you can select include inactive. So if I click on this, right, what's going to show me is my land account is going to show up. Let me see. Did I save that? Let me see if I saved it. Okay, I said include inactive. Okay, so it should be there. Let me see if I can type it in and it will appear. Okay. And yes, right here. So as you can see, it says in parentheses, it's been deleted. Okay. Now what I can do here is if I end up needing to use it again, already it says make active. So in this case, you're not permanently deleting anything, but it does show you in parentheses that it's been deleted, as in you can't use that account unless you make it active again. So again, what you're doing is you're just concising and cleaning up your chart of accounts by hiding all your accounts. That's what inactive does. It just does that. So in this case, leave it inactive. Okay? All right. And then let's see what else is next. Okay? So what if I choose, if I have two accounts that are similar in nature, right? Oh, sorry. I have two accounts that are similar in nature. So in this case, let's take a look at that very example here, right? Sales and sales of product income. That essentially is the same idea, right? So let me go ahead and look up that sales real quick. Okay? So you got sales and sales of product income. In this case, that's the same thing. A sale, whether it comes from product income or whether it comes from services, I already have a service account for service income. So in this case, why do I need to have a regular sales account? So in this case, I can choose to combine the two accounts if it makes sense to you, right? Why have two accounts that have two different names that do essentially the same thing? So in this case, we have the second option is to, instead of having an extra account on hand, I can combine the two to make it into one. So instead of deleting it, I'm going to get rid of it by combining it to another account. Now you want to be very careful and you want to ensure that this decision is final, because once you do that merging action, you are unable to undo that action. So once you merge, that's it. You can't unmerge it. Okay? So that's why you have to be very aware of what you're doing. So in this case, I want to get rid of my sales and combine it into sales of product income. So what do I need to do? Now they do recommend you to do this where you're going to edit the account that you do want, right? What you're going to do here is you're going to copy word for word the account name. So keyboard shortcuts work too, right? So the control C is to copy it, right? And what they do want you to do is, now that you copy the account name on there, right? Now they want you to look at the account that you absolutely do not want anymore. And what you're going to do here is you're going to edit the account you do not want. And what you're going to do is you're going to override and paste the account name that you do want on top of it. Okay? So I just replaced sales and put in sales of product income. Okay? Now, if you have account numbers turned on as well, yes, you have to also change the account number as well to match. Okay, so what we're doing is we're editing the account we do not want and changing it to the account name that we do want. Okay, and what this does is, so there's also another condition you have to meet too. Okay, once you've done that and you go ahead and process and click save, it's going to give you a message saying this account already exists. Okay, so if I go ahead and do that right here, this account already exists. Are you trying to merge this account? Do you want to merge this account? Or do you want to redo this and make a different change to it? So in this case, I want to make sales turn into sales of product income. So I'm going to click yes, I want to merge it. So once you've merged it, I'm going to go ahead and click save. So then now, if I take a look at my chart of accounts once again, I'm going to identify that I no longer have that sales of product income or sales anymore. I only have sales of product income. It is gone. And I cannot undo a merge. So that's very important that you need to know. So if you have an advertising account and you have a marketing account and you want to combine the two, just know at the end of the day, your advertising and marketing, if you had two previously account balances on there, you will not be able to associate which came first, the advertising or the marketing, because it's just going to combine everything together and you cannot undo it. Okay? So that's why it's very crucial that you do are for sure that you want to merge those two accounts. Okay? Now, here is the rule of thumb. The accounts that I just merged has to match in both account type and detail. So if you looked previously, it said service, If you looked previously, it should have said sales. The account type was an expense, and income, and the detail was sales of product income. Those two have to match in order for a merge to be successful. You cannot merge, for instance, your so as you can see, it says right here, sales has been deleted. You cannot merge an account if the account type is not the same. So I cannot merge an expense account with an income account, right? They're opposite of each other. Okay? You can't merge those together. And even if they are the same account type, but the detail type is different, you cannot merge it either. Okay? So that's the rule of thumb, is when you're merging two accounts, they have to be matching in account type and detail type. Okay? So that's the rule of thumb there. Okay? Any questions? Because that is going to be the end of chapter 2, setting up your chart of accounts. Okay? Any questions?